Good evening. Welcome to the Prestige. Or as Rob likes to say in his cool little voice, Ravyes likes to say in his cool little voice,
Stage.
the Prestige. The Prestige. Which I try to say it,
That's
but I don't
that's
think I got it.
that's a reference to the excellent movie with
Michael Caine
Michael Caine and Batman.
and
What's his
Batman.
name?
Christian
Christian
Bale.
Bale.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hilarious. I mean, I think Christian Bale can be referred to as Batman from here on out.
yeah.
I don't see a problem with that.
We bear no affiliation with the any of that stuff for legal reasons. I'm just gonna give that disclaimer.
Yeah, if someone wants to hit us up for copyright infringement because we mentioned the Prestige, be my guest. We have no money, but
Yeah,
I'm sure you
we're
might.
making no money.
Yeah, enjoy it while you can. So welcome to the Prestige. This is our second podcast. I am your host EC Bond, and with me, as always, is Rav. Yes, say hey.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, hello. Yes. For those of you watching at home, I do want to let you know that Ravyes is the Prince of Oakland. That is a title he has earned and earned it very well. We are both local Los Angeles rivals players, and we recently had a POC, a Prince of the City tournament here at Burbank at Geeky Tees, our home away from home, our sponsors. Not really, well, I like to think of them as a sponsor. That's just me. They support the game
Yeah,
very much. They support us very much. And it's
truly.
a great shop. Yeah, we like them very much. And we had a POC there, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the things that we did at this event was everyone came dressed like vampires hiding or in the masquerade, like you were pretending to be human, but you were a vampire. So everyone looked very nice. It was a cool event. Um, and our very own Jordan from It's Game Time in Culver City shop. I think they're meeting tonight actually. They He won it. He won the tournament, and it was very well deserved. He's a great guy, and congratulations to him.
Yeah,
There was also another Prince of the City event in Denver, in which Ali Infinite won that, and she is now the Prince of Denver or Colorado. I want to say Denver, even though I know it's Fort Collins, but in my mind, that's I'm from LA, so
yeah.
everything's Denver. Like I don't know.
It it's sort of like technically I won in Berkeley, but they gave me Prince of Oakland.
Oakland, right? It's like no one wants to say
Yep,
Prince of Berkeley. I think Prince of Berkeley actually sounds pretty cool, but we still want to say Oakland for some reason.
yep.
All right. But what we want to do tonight is break down those winning decks and talk about them. And as you can see, we do have TTS up, so you can take a look at some of the cards. We're going to pull them out and show you some of the winning decks from that game, and just go over what we think about them. So the first one is we were going to pull. This is Jordan's deck, right? That he won POC in Burbank.
That's right.
All right,
3-1,
3-1.
Prince Champ. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. So I believe his leader was Gia. So I'm going to pull her down.
Mhm.
And then go ahead,
So
Rob, and let me know.
Gia is an interesting choice. Whenever I look at Gia, I think about that double dominate. That I don't know if I haven't sat down. We're kind of looking at this deck in real time. Um, my guess is he would want to run a demand obedience,
Right.
because you're going to get basically a free shot on that demand obedience
Oh,
that
yeah.
requires two dominate. So Gia just feels like it goes hand in hand with that.
It does. I agree. And the thing is about like having two dominate with demand obedience, you're not going to hit that off on your very first turn, right? Like you're going to build up your vampires. You're going to get more vampires with dominate out there. And even if you do hit someone with demand obedience on your first turn, you're not going to do anything really. You're going to slow them down a bit. But I don't really see that as an effective strategy to pull out. What do you think, Rob? I don't know.
So here's the thing with Prestige Drain right now. When I think about Prestige Drain, it is it is a situational, opportunist kind of situation.
Right, right. Like you wait in the
Uh,
weeds for the right moment to strike.
yes, you don't. It's hard to set up a Prestige Drain because if you a couple of reasons. If it looks like you're about to win, people can sort of stop you. The rest of the table can team up to make sure you can't.
Yeah.
It's just too hard to try to do it from the beginning.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, what you'll see in these high level games is you get to those last couple rounds, and somebody's sitting at 3 or 2 prestige, and then they're ready for you to kill them. Now, it doesn't always
Right.
work because it might not be your rival, but sometimes the point totals are such that other people are so low that you can kill them and win even if they're not your rival.
Right.
So having that prestige train ready to go when the table presents you that opportunity is what I think is, in a lot of other games you wouldn't tech for that
Mm.
because you're trying to get your win con to go off perfectly.
Right.
In this game, your primary win con is always a struggle to make happen every single time, right?
Yeah, it's funny to call it the primary win con. I feel like you don't really have a primary way to win at this game. You have almost like a story. Like this is how this deck runs, this is how it works, but the table can change and the way the game is played can change enough where you need to be versatile. I don't think you can. I mean, certain strategies do work overall. I don't know. I mean, again, you know, I don't know. I always feel like the more versatile the deck, the better it is at winning. But you're also the guy who's saying this right now is a guy who hasn't won quite a bit. So I don't
Well,
know.
and that's the thing. That's the thing, though, is I I think winning in this game is a bad. Unlike other games, it's not a stat that you need to, like, win percentages are always going to be somewhere around 25 to 30%. Let's say
Oh,
40%.
I get what you're saying.
If you're a
Yeah.
person that's doing 40% win rates, you're doing really well. And as everybody sort of knows, if you play, you're just going to lose a lot of games. I don't care how good you are.
Yeah.
You're going to lose a lot of games because there's 3 other people in every single game.
That's the
And
thing. Yep,
yeah,
that's the thing. It's a player count. Like it's a 4 player game.
right.
So to be able to dominate every single time, I've only seen one deck do it. And we'll get into that. I think we'll probably talk about it later on. We should give that deck a little bit of love because it is the deck that was winning so much in
Yeah.
December and January, and it was just a straight build, and that build was just winning.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we did talk about Gia. We did talk about the double dominate with the
Mhm.
potence. She's a 1 across the board. Um,
So
and I
so the
don't think
po
he was
so
using it
yeah.
for. I don't think he was using double dominate for demand obedience into bleed. I don't think that was his strategy.
He does have three demand obediences, so I do think that was part of it. I think
Okay.
he was running demand obedience, but um I think that's not his main. I don't Looking at his deck list, and we'll get into it. I don't think it was the main idea because he wasn't running other prestige strain, uh, which I think is smart. That's why I really like what he did here. It's it's light prestige strain, which I like these days. Um, so getting into G a little bit, she's a 1/1/1 stat. What that means to me is defensive, right? That's You don't have any
Right.
natural twos, so your ability to do outsized damage is limited. On the other hand, you have a natural defense coming from every direction,
Right.
which is nice, right? Like it keeps you alive a little bit longer. The other thing about her is that she has potence. Potence is still a pretty good package, right? A pretty good damage package. You've got um, Stampede and you've got Throat Rip. So two different cards that can do a pretty high amount of damage. Maybe not coming from Gia per se, but from other people. So let's get into some of the other people that were run. And this is where I think it gets interesting. And this is the signature, one of the signatures of Leverix Jones, is that he likes to run tall, right? Sixes and fives and just that.
Oh yeah,
Just
heavy
run.
vampires, fat vampires. Oh yeah.
So vampire number 2 is Hydra. So that's 2 6s already. I think most people run only 1 6, and maybe that we're going to learn that that's a mistake, and maybe this is the best way to do it, or this is one way to do it, and it might start seeing a lot more play. I think, certainly the success of Leverix Jones decks across multiple tournaments proves that he's on to something here. So Hydra's a classic. Hydra is a heavy hitter with physical. 210 stat. Doesn't have any mental. Uh, Runs celerity, potence, and presence. He also has a nice ability that can be somewhat of a downside too if you're getting hit a lot. But getting that draw off the attack, it's a little bit difficult because you have to be attacking with Hydra. Is that right, EC? Am I right
He
about that?
is the attacker. It's not a party ability.
Yeah.
And does he get to draw the card before he plays a card?
Uh, that is a good question.
Yeah, I don't
I
remember.
think
I feel like attacker abilities trigger at a certain step, but the card play.
how about this? I'm gonna stall for time, and EC, you look up the rule on that.
Oh, okay, that works. I like it.
Um, so then, so Hydra's great. I not my favorite six. And oftentimes when I'm running Bruja, I just don't even pick Hydra. But the fact that it is a six is, a value of its own. It stays alive for a long time. One downside is if it ever dies, it takes forever to come back. But when I see Leverage Jones run these types of decks, he's running like two sixes, um, and that's it. So he has just two really big people, and they're really hard to kill, and he just hits hard sometimes, and that's the strategy. And I don't run that often, and sometimes I do, and I've had mixed results. But I think obviously, like, winning as much as he has, I'm gonna have to look at that again, look at that strategy. He's also running Marcus, um, and Marcus is another Lasombra with some more dominate. Same stat, actually different stats. So 201 stat line, so a little bit more of a puncher. Dominate, Oblivion, and Potence. Oblivion is another great attack uh, discipline. Some great attack cards were put into this last set. Um, a number of mental attacks, and then also a ranged attack that do above average damage for their card type. So great addition, another six, another example of him wanting to run like two sixes a lot of the times.
It's heavy, man.
Also, yeah, also running Beretta. Beretta is a classic. I feel like everybody knows Beretta who plays, but Beretta and range attacks go hand in hand, right? She gets extra damage on range, and the nice thing about that is it's hard to get extra damage on range because there's no natural stat that gives damage to range. So Beretta is it's nice. Her disciplines are relevant, so they play into a lot of good packages. Potence and celerity. Celerity is good. It's got lightning strike and it's got uh, drive by, but I think drive by is kind of not as played as it used to be. Certainly, certainly lightning strike is great because anytime you can keep uh, keep drop people's shields, it's awesome. But you need two of those out, which can sometimes be tough. So you would need like Hydra and Beretta or something like that. And so probably more of an edge case getting lightning strike to always go off. But 5 for 2 is just good anyway. So a lot of times you're going to use lightning strike even without the extra ability. So
But
that's Beretta.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying, but already even with the vampires we now are seeing, this these four vampires in one deck is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like a
yeah, it's very
six
tall.
six six five. Like these
Yeah,
are
so let's
very big vampires.
and you're gonna see it's not gonna get any smaller. So let's go with the next one. It's the Cossack.
Oh, the Cossack, there it is.
Yeah,
Great card, by the way. Just a
great
really
card.
cool ability that you can use to do in pretty much any deck if you're going for aggro. The Cossack
That's
is
right.
there for you. It's two physical, zero social, one mental, with celerity and potence. You tag that with Beretta, and yeah, you can pretty much guarantee some damage is going to be coming your way, along with the Cossack's ability, pay one blood. This character's next attack this turn cannot be blocked. Very good ability.
Yeah, great stat line for a five.
Yeah.
201. Um, I think social has gotten more damaging recently, so that might be a downside to Cossack eventually. I think social used to be pretty low damage. It had some bad effects, but it was low damage. But now it's a lot more damaging. But still, I think being able to defend against physical and mental are still some of the. Still think some of the hardest hitting attack cards are in physical and mental.
I think
So it's
so
nice.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I also think with mental, you have a lot of the sneaky attacks. You have those attacks
exactly.
that you can't really plan for. I don't know how many
Yep.
times I've been at a table and you see the mental coming and people are looking and thinking, what could this possibly be? Because mental
Yep.
is not necessarily a client specific attack. There are quite a few
Yeah.
of just mental attacks that any vampire can play that are damaging. Demand obedience, um, scurry the soul or something, whatever it's called.
Try the soul.
Yeah, scurry the soul. There's one that makes you discard. So many cool
Yeah.
cards using the
Yeah.
mental discipline for attacks.
Yeah. You're thinking of the one, the Malkavian uh, landlocked mental attack that does one. It requires 5 BP, and you have to discard. You can discard 2 cards for 2 more damage. That one's
Unhinged.
gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, unhinged. That one's really good. Of course you need Malkavian for that, but yeah, it's yeah. There's some great stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that just got printed in the last set too. There's a targeted mental attack that revolves around Oblivion, um, and then one that does a fear as well, utter
Mm,
darkness.
right.
Great cards, both mental. So mental's doing strong. All the attack types are pretty gnarly these days. But
Yeah.
I think, and probably somebody can correct me, but I actually like if I'm going to pick one stat to have low, I think it's social right now, just for damage numbers.
You think
It's
so?
still a little
I
bit, yeah. There's probably the only social I can think of that really knocks people out is if people are running clandestine and they run that one attack she has that does more damage when you have
Veiled
escape
threats. I think veiled
veiled
threats
threats.
does it.
So
Yeah.
so
But you
that
also
knocks
have
pretty hard,
Apex.
but
But
yeah,
you also have Apex Predator, which is a
yes,
social, and that's a very vicious card.
yes, but
Yeah.
it maxes out at 2. So
Yeah.
basically it's you're usually going to do, like, let's say 4 damage with that. But when you're talking about some of the damage you can do with physical, it's like 6 and 7 hits,
True.
and then with mental you can get a couple that are up to 6 or 7 damage. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's still social's almost there. I think that with the addition of uh, interrogation made a difference because that's a 3 for 2. Um, but compared to the kinds of things you can get with with the other two,
Yeah. The
it's
other thing
really
that
not.
interrogation does is the ability for
Oh, I,
interrogation.
I love it. I don't think it's in this. He did not put it in this deck, so let's save that conversation for later. But yes, we're getting on a tangent, which I love to do. But let's refocus on the old on Leverix Jones's deck
Yes.
here.
So we
Um,
have Gia, Hydra, Marcus, Beretta, and the Cossack.
and then now let's go to Adrian Belza.
Adrian
Now this is
Belza,
a
La
question
Sombra.
that I'm going to ask you. What do you think went into putting this in? What was the thought here? Why did he choose this one, do you think?
So let's go ahead and read it out. He's a
Yeah.
5, a 1 across the board with Obtenebration, or Oblivion, excuse me, Oblivion and Potent. Reach attacks from the streets. As the attacker, you can pay an agenda. This attack deals +2 to the target if you do not play an attack card. What's interesting about this is since it's a 1/1/1, he's basically hitting for 3 wherever
Oh
he
yeah.
wants
On any stat line.
on
Yeah.
any stat line. And it's reach.
And
So
it's
he's
reach.
not going out there to do it. And he has lovely blue eyes. I'm just noticing that right now.
Yes.
Is that's his appeal? His lovely blue Adrian Belza blue eyes. Thank you. But I think that's what it is the fact that he doesn't need the attack card to do the damage. So he can hit really hard with someone else with a Cossack that's unblockable or whatever he wants to do. On your second attack, you're just going to hit for 3 guaranteed. Like you just have to, get through someone's card or get through someone's stat, but without a card to be played, pretty good. I think that's the
Yeah, that's
thinking of it, but
interesting. Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting. So the idea is you hit once with somebody like Hydra or Marcus, with a card, you do a big, nice, big smack. They
Yep.
play, maybe they play something that defends against it, and then you come at them with Adrian in the second attack, and you can hit them wherever they're weakest.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me. So that, and I think that's yeah, that makes sense. I think Adrian will maybe see some more play because people might think about that. The cost is high.
The cost is high.
Pay, yeah, paying an agenda is tough unless you think you're going to knock them out. And that's basically what you're basically saying is, okay, I'm giving up on racing, racing agenda.
Right.
I'm going to knock them out, or I'm going to try to.
Well, I've seen him play this card quite a bit, and I don't think he really cares too much about his agenda when he's playing. And I've seen that a lot of deck that Lexifer Jones plays. Like, he's not going for the agenda win most of the time. He's going for the KO.
I do know that in that last game, he won, I think, on time with the most agenda.
Yeah.
But that might have been because he just didn't go with Adrian. So one of the interesting things about this game is a lot of times, because of the way that the game works out, you don't even draw into Adrian. So
Yeah.
maybe the game just said, okay, you should be racing for agenda this game, so don't do the other stuff. And that might be what he did for that game. But in another game, he might go, okay, this is a game where I can go aggressive, right? So that might be why Adrian's in there is for the pivot.
It could
One
be
thing
for
I
the
didn't
pivot.
mention,
Sorry, I do
yeah,
want to mention on that, just on that draw. It could also be, and this is the thing. Maybe we want to have him on the show and ask him directly,
oh
what the
yeah,
thought process is. But my guess is the versatility. He doesn't have to go
yeah,
fishing.
yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I think that's correct. The versatility. One thing I didn't mention about the Cossack is that ability is crazy. I don't think we kind of meandered. I want to go back to the Cossack for a second, just
Sure.
to give proper credit. That ability is basically it's a targeted attack. You've turned all your attacks into targeted if you can pay the one. Worth mentioning, maybe the best Bruja, certainly the best 5 cost Bruja, and almost an auto include in every single Bruja deck I ever see.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, but just
Pretty
wanted to say
much an
that
auto include in any Bruja deck, auto include in any aggro deck that you're going to be running Potence or Celerity.
the other thing about the Cossack is I think the Cossack is a perpetual second leader. So a
Yeah.
lot of times, if you have the Cossack and you get forced to redraw your leader, I see Cossack a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's like it just makes sense as okay, the Cossack can stay alive, she can be the platform, etc. So something to consider. So the last character is Raven Smith, another Lasombra.
Another 5
And
Lasamba. Goodness.
yes, so we have nothing below 5 BP in this deck. So that's an interesting thing right there. We have, I'm guessing the attack package is going to be somewhere between Potence and Oblivion because that's the relevant symbols we see a bunch of, with a little bit of Celerity.
Yeah.
Um, which is a great package and Dominance. So
And
so this
and I
is
think
this is a
dominance is
yeah
above. I think dominance is above celerity in this deck, just because dominance is uh, that demand obedience can be so damaging. It can win you the game in the right moment. And
yes
I think that's
in
what
the
it
right moment.
is,
Yeah. So
especially
I'm
G
seeing a
as a
theme
leader.
here.
Yeah.
It's a lot of clutch play pivotability, right? And I think that's what you want to see in a tournament deck in this game is you need to be able to go a lot of different directions because the game just goes in weird directions. So starting with Gia, you have your double dominate, which means you can play a demand obedience at any time if you wanted to. Ending up with cards like the Cossack or Hydra or Marcus gives you the ability to punch hard. Beretta gives you, let's see, is yeah, so he's running some makes his Scopot 3/6 better. Scopot 3/6 is great cards. They get through Intel. So that's what Beretta's around for.
Yep.
In addition to has a great mental stat.
Yep.
Adrian's a nice second part of a 1-2 punch, right?
Right.
And then Raven has a great social stat. Can't beat that. Is running relevant running Dominate and Oblivion, and I like this ability. It
Me
is
too.
situational, right? It may not happen, but when it does, stealing from a foe is so good.
Oh,
It's such a good ability that even if you get it to happen once, it's like so good,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, it's not something you can pull off all the time, but when you do pull it off, I wouldn't call this a control ability. It's not something you're not going to control the table with this, but the threat is almost as threatening as it is to have Jesus out, where you kill him and you're going to get the agenda from it. Raven Smith doesn't even need the action to steal the agenda from you. She can just
Yeah,
exhaust and steal the agenda. That's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so this is the theme I'm seeing is having cards in your hand that you can adjust your play style on the fly to the situations that are happening in front of you.
Oh yeah.
Um, and all these things have that theme. So Raven feels that way, Adrian feels that way, all these. And then also the theme of having two big people rather than like three slightly smaller people or four smaller people. So that's the other thing I'm seeing. So let's get into the cards. Yeah.
Sure.
Or
Yeah. Let's do that.
let's do the agenda in Haven.
Okay. Let's do that.
So yeah, let's do so
You're
the
so you're on
agenda.
this.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I just so you're on this table too. If you want to jump in and start throwing out cards, I can just go
Sure,
ahead and.
I'm in the wrong. Let me switch my little. Okay.
But let's see. What was the agenda you played? I forget.
He ran Turf War.
Ah, Turf War. Such an
Yeah.
enticing card.
So what I would love to hear, because I have a lot of skepticism around Turf War. Obviously, I need to hold my skepticism because obviously it won. Uh, what I always have to figure out is what is I'm going to pull out a couple other ones. What is it that Turf War gives you, and maybe you can help me with this
Okay.
over, let's say, a prize fighter
Interesting. Okay.
or a city deck situation like Invisible Army. And I think some of these answers are obvious, but what's your thoughts? Why would somebody choose Turf War over these other two?
The thing about prize fighters, so as you attack a character, put an agenda on your attacker. At the end of your turn, put one agenda from a character in your cautery on your agenda card. The cool thing about prize fighter is even though you're getting that agenda as an attacker, if you're playing the Sombra, there are other ways to get agenda on characters, and this is still going to trigger. So that's what
Right.
makes this a versatile agenda. Invisible Army, very cool in the sense that when a character in your card attaches a Vagrant, you gain 2 agenda. When you defeat a character with an attacked Vagrant, you gain 1. That is a possible 3-point, 4-point turn. Very powerful if you can pull it off. But again, it's dependent on the city deck. Prize Fighter is somewhat dependent on attacking. Turf War, though, on the other hand, rewards you for just being aggressive all across the board. You know, if if
Yeah.
I mean that's one agenda for attacking a character, your rival, one agenda for excuse me, you get an agenda for defeating your rival. You get an agenda if you defeat a non-rival. You get an agenda if you defeat a vampire with 5 plus BP. It just makes you
Yeah.
very, very dangerous on 2 actions if you're able to pull it off. And with a heavy aggro deck, you're getting 4 agenda, maybe even 5 depending on the situation. Like it's very, very dangerous um, agenda because it just rewards you to be aggressive. So is it better than Prize Fighter or Invisible Army? I think it's the player. I think it's a style of play. You
Yeah.
know.
So I totally agree, and I think I have to really think about Turf War. I guess what you would want to happen is you would want to be in a position where you can threaten to knock out two people a turn. But the only problem I think about in my head is your like the destabilization of the table, right? So if you hit somebody that's not your rival,
Mm-hmm.
are you putting them in such a bad position that they lose, right? So how do you make all that points? Because let's say let's say you're getting one. vampire a turn,
Mm-hmm.
dead. If it's your rival, great. Then you can maybe get like two for the fives and one for the other ones. So let's say you knock out three, four, five. You're
Hmm.
still not making enough to win on agenda. So then you're probably going to want to have to go after the prince as well to make up agenda points. And prize fighter, maybe the thing is that every time you attack, you're going to definitely get one put on and you don't have to knock somebody out, right?
Right.
And it has like added potential on like Marcus and Gia, right? Because
Right.
Gia gives you an extra, basically every turn.
You can pull off
When you
another one.
defeat a character, you can pull off another one of the prize fighter ones.
Yeah, that's Gia's ability.
But
We didn't really go over, but yeah, when this party
yeah,
defeats a character, move one agenda from any character card to your agenda
right,
card. Now that is still circumstantial. Like you have to defeat a character in order to trigger that ability.
right.
So
But but in turf war situation, you would also need to defeat a character in order to get those points. So that's kind of where I'm sitting for me, and I'm sure there's a reason, but I'd love to hear at some point what went into choosing turf war over something like prize fighter or
sure,
something else.
sure, yeah,
I'd love to hear that
yeah,
because I have skepticism around turf war because it forces you to have to knock out a lot of vampires, and for me, in my experience, it is hard to reliably knock out vampires because each one has different stats.
sure,
People have different reaction cards. It's just you're playing against their hand, right? And like that changes, right? Somebody you could be playing against somebody that has like a huge stack of cards, and it's just like, well, I can't kill that.
yeah.
And like typically you can't do more than 6 or 7 damage a hit, and yeah, it's just hard to always knock out two people, two characters. But maybe
I'd
there's
love to ask
some
that
sort of
question.
math.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'd love to ask that question to see Turf War over Prize Fighter, even Invisible Army to a certain degree. I feel, and I think the answer is going to be play style,
yeah,
right?
it probably is.
It's more
So
likely play
we'll
style.
keep on moving. So turf war, and then the Haven was the Tenderloin. I definitely don't have experience with the Tenderloin. Let's take a look. I just haven't played it much.
You got it? I'll do it.
Yeah.
This is fun.
And then where are you?
It's funny, like our hands are chasing each other trying to get to the tenderloin.
Last one.
Of
Of course, it's the
course.
last one. Okay. All right. So characters in your Haven have +1 secrecy. Oh, that's normal. Remove one from X different sources you control. You pay X less to recruit your next character this turn.
That's why he has there because he's playing fives and sixes across the board.
Right. Right. So he's getting cheaper fives and sixes.
Yep.
I guess that's why it's weird that it's turf war, isn't it? You would think
We'd have to
again
look at everything
it
else, right? We'd have to look at everything else just because
yeah,
I again the little bit that I've seen of Lexifer Jones at the table, he's not really worried about agenda. That's not his main way of winning,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So
There you go.
yeah,
So it's all about the attack,
it's all about the
and that's that.
attack. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, so basically, cheaper stuff is what this means.
Yep.
Cheaper people, and it costs you, you know, it's definitely like a La Sombra thing because those Sombras are the ones that are putting on
Oh yeah.
agenda so that you can end up paying less for stuff.
Yeah. The Sombra
Okay, so
uses
let's
agenda to do stuff. Very cool. Just overall there. So what other cards were we seeing? I know we saw Demand Obedience was in the deck.
yeah, so let's take a look at so maybe let's talk about the construction, the numbers, right? The percentages. Uh, I agree with Lebrex a lot on his approach to actions. He always runs very few, relatively few actions. So about he only has about a fourth of his deck comprised of actions. So 9 actions,
Okay.
and the rest are combat cards. I like that.
Wow.
Combat
Really?
cards
Okay.
are powerful in this game. I typically go that direction. There are a couple, this is a little bit hypocritical because knowledge is power is the deck I ran with and won the tournament, and that is a deck that runs a lot of actions.
Right.
But the reason it does is because knowledge is power, basically works off of actions in the streets from people. So
Right.
it's a little bit different. You're also drawing more cards. Um, But most of the time, I don't run that many actions. In this case, he's running 9. That feels right to me. So let's go over the actions and why they're there.
Okay.
Coup de grace. I almost don't need to say why coup de grace is in there, but let's talk about it.
I mean, coup de grace is certainly one of those cards where I really liked coup de grace um, on just what it does. Right. I think it's a very cool card. Um, Sorry if I'm jumping all over the place here, guys, on
No,
camera.
that's fine.
But trying to get it just centered. Action used only in the streets. Must have potence. Pay 2 blood. Defeat target wounded character not in their haven. Just the idea that you can take out, you can just cap off a vampire without having them to have any recourse. They can't block you. They can't stop you. You're just doing the action. They're gone. Is such a tempting card to have
Yeah,
and fun to play.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then we're also looking at the shakedown, which is look at a target foe's hand, then name an attack type. The target discards all cards of that type. And if the
Yeah.
sheriff, you gain a prestige that way. Clearly, this is a way to control people, control. If you're an aggressive deck out there, you can hit and you're getting hit by an aggressive deck. You shake them down. This card goes backwards and protects you.
Yeah. So a couple interesting things, and let's the shakedown, awesome card, and part of that is there's just such good attacks around, and every once in a while, I would say on average you're gonna at least get one attack cards because, as I said, people run attack cards.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like there's almost no decks that run no attack cards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like almost every deck runs attack cards. At least I would say 15 cards are attacks, even in the lowest attack card decks. So your instance of running into at least one attack card in their hand makes this worth the price of admission, right? Because if that's their only attack, you knock it out. Secondary ability, you know what's in their hand.
Yep.
That's huge because knowing if they have reactions makes a huge difference in how you attack somebody, right? So if you know they have no reactions, that's also worth it, right? This
Absolutely.
other,
Yeah.
it's a testament to this card because you look at this secondary ability about the sheriff, which never goes off because people don't play the sheriff all that often right now,
Right.
and it doesn't even matter that you don't get that. That one's just that's basically icing on the cake. If you do happen to run sheriff, great, but really it's this first part. Any discard in this game it's worth it. I think you're going to see shakedown for a long time be a staple of a lot of decks.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to put shakedown in a deck if you can have that space. I mean, really, in any aggro deck, I would say shakedown, right? But I
Yeah.
don't know. But yes, I agree. Also, a great card. So winning another action card. Put one agenda from the general supply on each character in your coterie. I mean,
This is a combo card, right?
yeah,
So this is a card that only works when you're running the Tenderloin and Gia and Marcus and Adrian, I guess. So this is all part of this using this La Sombra based strategy that just got released, which is you put a bunch of agenda down on characters and then you get something from that.
right.
So in this case, you're using it for the Tenderloin to get cheaper people.
And
But yeah,
yeah, and also there are some combat cards that will call on this agenda to increase. So we'll see if they're in this deck as well. But so those are the three actions that he ran here: coup de grace, the shakedown,
one more. It's
and
an
winning.
unhosted. Let's grab that. He also ran. So getting numbers here. He did two of these, two of these, and three of these.
Oh, okay.
And I think I have thoughts on why he did that. I think that's kind of how I would have done it too. Uh, the spoils. We're looking for the spoils. Yep, here it is. So this is another one. The spoils is a classic. It's a
Yep.
classic of attack decks. Getting a free heal on each character in the party is unreal. That can be up to 3 blood healed off of a kill, right?
Yeah.
Off of what you want to do anyway, right? If you have a chance to run this and you're running an attack deck, if you're running Bruja and you're running an attack deck, you should always be thinking about slotting in the spoils. It's just good. It's just good. And it's unhosted, so it doesn't cost you an action, or it doesn't cost you a vampire tap. It
Hey,
costs you an action.
real quick,
Um,
how did you make that little arrow appear?
oh, that's tab.
Oh, cool.
We're
All
learning
right.
new things here on the old TTS.
We're teaching you how to use, teaching me how to use TTS, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so the numbers here are 2, 2, 2, and 3. And the reasons for that is, again, actions. You don't want too many of them because they they're situational. They're always somewhat situational, right? Coup de grace, super situational,
Right.
right? And losing an action for something that isn't mission critical is a problem, right? A lot of times you're just going to want to be attacking on those actions or playing a vampire, right? So basically, your actions need to be better than the choice of attacking or playing a vampire,
Right.
which oftentimes they're not. So you kind of see the same actions over and over again because a lot of the actions may be good, but they're not good enough, right? To outweigh the cost of a full action and a vampire tap most of the
Right.
time.
Right.
That's heavy,
And that's what
right?
we're seeing here. That's what we're seeing that strategy. Only 4 attacks in the deck. Break down what you will, like 3, 2, and 2. But when these cards come up and they get used, they're going to be helpful.
Yes, yes. And that's what you want. You want your actions to be so good that you're going
Right.
to want to use them almost all the time,
Right.
right? Otherwise, you're just sitting there and you're probably just going to use it to heal, right? Because it's like, I don't need this, right? Um, all right. So that's actions. Everything else is combat. So let's get into it.
Nice. This
Um,
is what I'm excited about.
yeah. So let's start with the mental attacks. We already talked about one of these.
Demand obedience. I'll pull it
Demand
down.
obedience.
Okay.
We've also got irresistible voice. Where are you? Right here. We've got terrorize. That's another classic.
Yep. That's a Bruja.
And that's it. That's it for
Mental
mental.
attacks.
Yeah. So, talking about these, fairly obvious why these are good. They're high damage, right? They're high damage for BP. Irresistible voice is the second best next to terrorize, right? Terrorize is the most efficient BP to damage mental attack that there is, right? If you don't count the ones that count up for, how many symbols of this or whatever, just basic straight up off the card, best efficiency 3 for 2. It also happens to have an ability that sometimes works really well, right? Especially for attack decks, because what you're doing is you're making it so they can't pull a block, right?
Right.
You're exhausting all their characters. They can't block now because blocks cost a tap.
Yep.
So now you can hit whoever you want. So you hit somebody with a terrorize, and then you hit whoever you actually wanted to hit with the second attack, right? That's the combo. It happens to help that it's just high damage anyway, 3 for 2.
Yep.
Irresistible voice, similar. You just want another attack, so you put this in there. When you're looking for just another basic, mental attack, irresistible voice is next in line, right? If you're already running terrorize, you have the Bruja to slot that in. The next one is going to be irresistible voice. This other
And
ability,
the ability there is
yeah,
very helpful because those are party disciplines, right? You just need to
that's
have
right.
someone with presence and someone with dominate. And what we just
Uh,
saw from
no, 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 no. This isn't party. So
oh,
in
it's
this
not
case,
party.
it does have to be the acting vampire. So the acting vampire needs to have. So this is a little bit hard to read. So for new players, this is important. Irresistible voice has caused a lot of people to trip up. The acting vampire first must have presence, and then if it has dominate, it gets the secondary. So basically, the first one is you can pay 2 to steal a retainer from the target. Really good. Most of the time, you're going to be stealing a vagrant, which is a huge boon and sucks for them because usually what it means is they're going to take more sad in addition to the damage you're doing, and you're going to take less sad. So usually you're going to grab a Vagrant. Not always. Sometimes you're going to grab something that gives you more damage potential, like an Athlete or something like that. But most of the time you're going to grab a Vagrant.
I think
Uh,
stealing someone's retainer can be devastating in the right circumstances.
Absolutely. Certainly in an invisible army deck,
Yeah.
it has a double ability that you can get 2 points off of it if you steal it. So that
Right.
it becomes even better.
And
Um,
again, 2 damage on a mental. It's very powerful. Very
Good.
helpful. Yeah.
Very good. Yes. Like basically top level of just basic on the card text. Only downside to Irresistible Voice is the BP, but in this deck we don't have that problem because everybody's above 4. The Band-Aid Beans we already talked about. That's the clutch card. Somebody in the game is at 2. They just happen to have gotten there somehow. They've played risky. A lot of times people have to play risky to win. So sometimes they're just like, I got to play risky to win. And you sweep in and you go, okay, well, no, actually, I'm going to be the one that wins this game. And that's the kind of thing Demand Obedience is. 1 damage is a little low. It's hard to knock people out, but it's not nothing. So sometimes you might just use it for damage. Certainly you want the other 2 over that, but maybe that's what you drew, and maybe it's enough, and you just go with it. So
What?
that's the mental attacks.
Yeah.
Let's get into the social attacks. So we've got just one social attack. Which one do you think it is?
If I had to guess, biting comment.
Not correct. What's your
Oh.
second guess?
No, I don't know. I mean, uh, he's got Bruja. Intimidate? Really?
Intimidation.
Oh, for the
So
fear.
let's get into it. So I think
Well, first
it
off,
wasn't
just
a
so we
bad
can for the
it wasn't a
audience.
bad guess.
Well, for the
Um,
audience, before yeah, I mean, because biting comments like the card that
yeah,
a lot you see a lot. Intimidation, 4 cap, 1 social damage, um, +2 to city deck mortals. But more importantly, if the attacker's BP is higher than the target's, which and you saw in this deck, you have a lot of 5s and 6s. Exhaust the target and put fear token on them. What's important about that is fear does not automatically tap the vampire. So this card taps it and then puts a fear token on them. Fear will not let them untap on the beginning of their next turn. That you're basically taking a vampire out of commission for a turn.
yeah, yeah. It's but I think the reason why people play this is for sad. This is
Ah,
a sad killer.
yes.
I don't know if that's exactly why Leverix Jones ran it, but I think its ubiquitousness is because it can hit so many different things and kill them with one hit. Anything in the city is going to go down in one hit from this.
Yep.
You like most like everything except for a sad requires you to have a 0 stat to kill
Yep.
with intimidation. So anybody can kill anything in the street with intimidation, except for a sad. If you have a 1 stat, you can kill a sad. And if you look at the vampires here, there's 1 stats all over the place. So it's very, very easy to just go in the street, get that point. That's a big reason why you see intimidation all the time, is
Yep.
because it just kills things in the streets.
Yep.
On top of that, that secondary ability, we're running a lot of 6s. Okay. So now that's going to be more likely to occur, right? You're going to hit some 5s and you're going to be actually able to intimidate them. A lot of times though, that doesn't go off because you're hitting another 6, but still, this is a city killer. City deck is where most points are. I'll be honest with you. Um, and sometimes you need to kill a sad, and that's what intimidation's for. Sometimes, though, in this deck, I think probably you wouldn't kill sad, and you would kill city deck mortals. But same thing, it's a quick kill. To kill city deck mortal this way, you don't have
I
to
mean, it gets you
use
the
any other
agenda,
cards.
right? And we've already
Exactly.
seen how this deck is using agenda to its advantage in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Intimidation is
Uh,
there because it's a versatile card for hitting the city, hitting your
yeah.
rival.
Right. So let's go to physical. And there's definitely more of these, which shouldn't surprise you looking at the stat lines. Lightning Strike,
Yep.
Money Shot, and that's kind of the combo related card. And then we're talking about Stampede and Throat Rip.
I got Stampede
And
and I got Throat Rip.
so, and I'm going to say this is this is a pretty standard set for uh these disciplines. There's nothing particularly unique about this. I would say there's a couple standouts. So I would say in these two cases, this is like the Lever-X Jones spice right here. Lightning Strike, you're going to run this in an attack deck where you have a 5 or a 6 and you have Celerity. It's a great attack card. It's one of the best. You're going to run it almost always. Stampede is another one. If you're running the Potence package, you're going to run Stampede. Sometimes you're going to run Stampede even without, because that ability for every character you have in the party to knock off a shield, it's really good. So I could see people even running Stampede without Presence, but with
Oh, sure.
without Potence, but with Potence, it's awesome. 4 for 2, great card.
Well, let me throw
Throw,
this out there. Let me
yeah,
just throw, because
yeah, yeah,
since we're on Stampede, there is the idea that with this deck that he's running nothing but fives and sixes. I would be surprised if he has three vampires out. So, well, you know what? -3 shields, pretty good. I'll take it all back right now. If you can, just with three vamps out in the party doing an attack, and you're getting -3 negative shields plus two physical stats damage on top of your stats, I should say. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. Awesome. Awesome.
But
Definitely.
let's just talk about 2. So imagine this. Think about all the defensive cards in the game. What's the highest shields that you've ever seen on a defensive card?
You got Tenebrous Arms, I think it is. That gives you four, but you're
Avatar.
right. Um,
That gives you 5 actually, but only
five.
if you spend an agenda, and
But
only if you have Oblivion.
right. But everything else is two shields, roughly, I'd say.
Except for one, which is insanity defense when you're blocking
Mental.
mental.
Right.
But that's the only one. So there's 2 examples where you're running above 2,
Right.
right? Everything else is 2 or lower. So even if you have just 2 people, you're canceling out almost every other reaction that they can play that is defending,
Yeah, that's
including,
true.
by the way, the new rats, right? So let's say you have the defensive wraith, and they do the thing where they flip it and then they use it right away. That's 2 shields, doesn't work, right? Unless they play another reaction. So
Right.
awesome even with 2, excellent with 3, and then if you also have the potence, amazing, right? Throat rip is another one. Um, it shouldn't surprise you if you're running potence. You're going to be running throat rip. Come on. It counts up how many characters have it, and it gives you that bonus. Heavy hitter, great card. It's an auto include if you're running potence,
I mean,
right?
you're getting
And you're doing
if
attacks.
you're hitting with like the Cossack, or is it the Cossack that has a +2 um, physical?
Cossack,
Marcus does it.
Cossack,
Hydra does it. Right.
yeah, yeah.
So that's giving you
Everybody in this deck
three.
has potence except for
Yeah.
Raven.
Yeah.
So basically, you're running. It's going to be a +2 in this deck because you might be running 2 people, but then it's a 4 for 3, right? It's good.
Still good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. A natural 5 with the Cossack, right?
Yep.
Because you're getting 3 + 2. That's good.
And
That's
the
really
and the
good.
best thing about these two cards is in the same deck, you don't know what's going to come at you. You know it's a physical attack, stampede or throat rip. How do you plan for it? Are you going to if you think a stampede's coming, do you even bother playing your reaction with your shields? If they're just going to be, taken out, maybe you want to play something else,
It's
right?
a
I
bad
mean,
feeling, isn't it?
yeah,
When you're sitting there and
it's
you've got a
terrifying.
reaction and they might have a stampede, you're like, should I play this? Should I just not? Like, should I let them play other stampedes so I can play? It's a
Yeah,
tough choice.
yeah. It's a strategy at that point, and it's a
Yeah,
bluff. It's a poker game, right?
yeah,
So
and
now let's talk money. Unless you have something else,
yeah.
I was gonna say let's
No, that's
talk
it.
money shot.
Yeah.
Can you leave money shot where it is? Because I have it on the.
I Oh, okay. It's on
Yeah,
the stream. My
yeah.
bad.
Money shot.
Yeah. So money shot is a part of the combo that's being run here, which is it's based off of these agenda getting put on everything,
Right.
but it has a little bit more utility because you could put one on anybody. So you don't have to put it on one of your people. And the nice part about that is if you've got an easy target, it is a way that you can get another point, right? So you can money shot somebody. Now, the downside is you have to defeat somebody in order to get it to work. And it is a little bit low powered. It's a four
Right.
for one.
Right.
Um, but obviously and he has three of them in here. So obviously it worked, right? I mean that's something I was skeptical of. Can you knock people out regularly with a money shot to get the thing to work? But I guess you can. And once it works, it's great because you can put it on another weak vampire,
Right.
get that point, or if you want to put it onto your characters for part of your combo, it's also going to help you there as well. So
And
that's the money
just so
shot.
we're clear, that picture isn't what a money shot is, but it's fine. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if we're gonna call something money shot,
Right.
it's a little off color. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah. Well,
But
with humor.
these are the attack cards in this deck. So hold on, is this the entire deck? Is this what we're looking at here? That one?
No, um we got some reactions,
Oh, okay. Let's
but
see.
this is almost everything.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good chunk of it.
Yeah. So lots of three ofs, and I've even heard, and I mean this is like classic card game thought,
Yeah.
but Leverex likes to run threes. If he's running anything, he's running threes. I think the only exceptions are actions, and I think we've already described that they're a little more situational. Um, and if you're gonna run two ofs, you're gonna run something that you don't. When you run two of, that means you don't want to see it in every game.
Right.
You want to see it every once in a while. If you run one of, it's like you want to see it like once in a blue moon.
And what you're
Um,
also seeing here, especially for an attack deck, as much as this is, he doesn't really have to worry about the card draw too much. He's gonna get attack cards. Which one?
yeah,
We'll see. But he's gonna
yeah.
get the attack cards, and every one attack card he pulls is going to work with the vampires he has in play.
All right. So we've got some reactions. So
Oh yes.
let's do another quiz here. EC, what reactions did he run? He ran two. Let's see, one, two. He ran two reactions.
Two reactions. If
Which
I had
ones
to
did he run?
guess, well, I'm thinking fleetness, just because he's running a lot of celerity. Um, and then Tenebrous Avatar. I can't
Okay,
see. Am I
you're
wrong?
half right.
I'm
You're
half
half
right.
right.
Oh, I'm
So
half right.
so Tenebris, yes.
Okay.
And also slap in the face.
You know what? Yep, absolutely. Slap in the face in
So
this deck. I can see
so
that.
in this deck, so I am very skeptical of damaging reactions. But the reason I am is because I'm skeptical of turf war. And I shouldn't be.
Okay.
Because damaging reactions go great with turf war
Yep.
because you do want to hit people out of like non-rivals and you want to knock them out. And so all of a sudden slap in the face becomes useful. I also think slap in the face is useful for things like Dragon Zeus, but we'll get into that at some other point.
Sure. Sure.
But basically the thought you need to have when you're running damaging reactions is, do I want to hit my non-rival in the face? Because that's typically what's going to happen. Your downstream rival's probably not going to be attacking you too often. Sometimes they do, but you can't really rely on it. They're probably going to be trying to attack their downstream rival, and typically the person attacking you is going to be your upstream predator. Do you want to hit them? If you hit them too hard, you may destabilize them, and they may lose, which means you lose. But I
It's
think,
funny you bring
yeah,
that
go
up.
ahead.
If I just to address that, because the night before the POC, we were playing at Guildhall, and I think I was playing Brandon, and he came in hard on me twice, but on the second attack, I did a bad reflection, and I think I KO'd his vampire in reaction to him trying to KO my vampire, and gave someone else the win because of it. And he was telling me, like, you basically gave that guy the win, and I'm like, I'm not going to just sit here and let you KO me twice. Like, I have the card, I'm going to play the card. You need
Right.
to just, you are coming in hard on me. He's like, well, you're my rival. I'm like, I understand the logic, but
Yeah.
logic cuts both ways. And that's the idea about these hit back cards, that I see why some players kind of throw them out there, like, You're 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 basically king making, but they only they only work if you're being attacked. So what are you
Right.
supposed to do? Not block, not play reactions, just take hits? It makes no sense.
Well, my thing is always I would rather play defensive reactions because defensive reactions keep your people alive so they can do more. On the other hand, like you're saying, I think that the value here is that it's turf war. So
And then it's turf war, right?
you get more from a possible KO of a vampire that isn't your rival.
Yep.
Most of the time you don't. And so that's why I'm always dubious if you're trying to win, right? Then you want all your cards to be pushing you towards that win. Not just surviving, but winning. And the damaging reactions typically they don't necessarily help you, and so I would personally rather be playing Tinnitus Avatar or what you mentioned. You said fleetness.
Fleetness,
Um,
right? That's what I would
right,
think of. If you're going to play reaction cards, you're playing them for the defense. You're not playing them for the attacks.
but here's an
But
example of where you might, and I think
exactly.
also somebody could make a good case for Dragon's Roost too because of how that plays, but we won't get into that. But that's my thoughts on damaging reactions. I think slap in the face is one of the best ones if you're going to play a damaging reaction because it's very consistent. Um,
Yep.
and it obviously you need to be running a lot of people with high physical stat because you're going to be doing damage back with physical.
You're doing
It
one,
also,
and then you're doing, oh, and then you're doing the two, right? Or
yeah.
the
So
one
whatever your
back.
stat
So
is plus the one, so
plus
it
one.
could be up to three, let's say, unless you also have an athlete, then it could be four.
And it's responding to a social mental attack. So if someone's coming at you and turns out they're a zero for physical, they're gonna get hit pretty hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna
yeah.
take it in the chin from that. So
And it's another example of a clutch card, right? It's a
yeah,
card that could give you that last point that you need to win, right? Like
especially
it
with
could
turf
do
war.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it could do
yeah.
it. So this
Tenebris
is
is
sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Let's talk about Tenebris.
Oh
I
sure.
think people. I think what people don't understand when they first start playing this game is how good one is.
Yep.
I think it's hard to see because you're going 5 for 1. Ah, that's not that great, right? People are playing Tenebris Avatar even when they don't have the Oblivion to get this second one off. Why is that, EC? I'm sure you know, but I'm going to let you
Oh, I
give me
love it. This
honors.
is like a quiz.
Yeah,
It's because Tenebra's Avatar blocks every single damage that is coming at you in the game.
every single one.
So it's a one shield across the board anytime you're going to get hit. And that one shield, Ravyes is right. One shield is enough to keep you in the game, to keep you fighting.
Yeah, and that's because they've done a good job of balancing this game, and it's really hard to knock out vampires in one hit.
Yeah.
So
And not to.
usually you do just enough damage to knock somebody out, and one less means you don't.
Yep. If you're doing 5 damage, and yeah, you don't really care so much about the one shield, but then it doesn't really matter because you're as being the defender, right? If you're facing 5 damage, you're gonna get KO'd. Like that's just what's gonna happen. But odds are that's not what's coming at you. You're gonna be getting something that's just enough to take you out, and that one shield is. Plus, there's the ability with Oblivion. You pay an agenda, you get the 4 shields. You're staying in there just as long.
Yeah,
We do have a comment from our satyr jester. Inmate slapping you in the face. I hope I said that right,
yeah,
because that's
yeah,
basically, yeah, he's right.
yeah,
Inmate slapping you
yeah.
in the face.
Can you do inmates ability when he's defending? I don't
Inmate,
think
I
so.
believe that is an attacker ability,
Yeah. So yeah, he's just a normal three hit on slap in the face. So
which is
not
still pretty
full
good.
inmate,
Still
but
good.
still pretty good,
Still
especially
good.
for a 4.
Yeah.
Um. So icing on the cake here with the Oblivion ability, certainly very good. Because getting that 5 shields means you like if somebody's hitting you with like something crazy, like it keeps you from dying. But
Yeah.
a lot of times Tinderburst can just keep you alive. I think the other thing to consider is people think this is a high BP. It is, but in games, oftentimes the thing you want to protect is your big person. The people you don't care about protecting is the little guys, and the reason is because the little guys come back quicker, right? They come
Yeah.
back quicker. So Defending them, not as big of a deal. Let them die, or at least more often you want to let them die than your big people.
So this
In
is
this deck, there are no small people,
yeah,
so you know.
but this is the deck that won the Burbank POC, played by Lexifer Jones, the new Prince of Burbank.
Yeah.
Very cool. That was fun breaking down this deck, and one of these days we're gonna have him on the show too to kind of talk about his ideas when it comes to deck building. I'm sure that is something that a lot of people uh, want to hear about, especially other players. Um, if you're on the Rivals database, I know that Lexifer Jones has a few decks on there. I've seen his name on there for decks that he's built, just for other players to kind of check out. Um, so to get his ideas on how he's building decks, that would be a very interesting show, I think, in the future.
I guess the question I have is, how do you say his name? Is it Lever Rex Jones or is it Levi Rex Jones?
Man, I say it a bunch of ways. I say it all kinds of different ways, but I try to be as consistent as I can when I do. We do have another comment in the thread. Steven is saying, just don't play any characters less than 5 BP. Easy.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
I mean, the cool thing about playing vampires with this high BP is you're not fishing. You're never drawing from your crypt because you got your
No.
two vamps out. That's
Yep.
12. That's already you're left with 6 prestige. You're done. And I didn't see. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any way to get prestige in this deck.
No. No. But
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, when I was looking at I saw the last couple rounds of the last game, and I hope he corrects me, but I don't think that Lever X Jones was low on prestige.
I think he was. I think
Oh, was he? I think
I
everybody in the game was low on prestige.
I think
And
there
I
was a moment.
imagine,
Yeah, but I think there was a moment at the very end
yeah,
when I walked in. If I can and remind me, I'm hoping if other people there that they can speak up and let me know. But what I remember was that there was a demand obedience played against Lexifer Jones that Tree Shack Dragon Roost blocked. If I'm not mistaken, I
yeah,
think that's what happened.
I don't remember. The play I remember is had nothing to do with Lever X Jones. And this is the interesting thing about the game too, is at some level Lever X Jones was in the right seat as well. Not to take anything away from his win because he went 3-1,
Sure.
but but that last game was crazy. And if I remember correctly, um, there was a fateful haze played.
Oh, I
Do you
think
remember
yeah,
that?
it was Hayes. Yeah, Hayes was played at somewhere on that last round, that last turn,
Kept somebody
and
alive. Yeah.
yeah, and it kept someone alive. So Stephen is actually clarifying some things when it comes to Stephen's comment was winning saves prestige with Tenderloin. Uh, because he's playing Tenderloin, he's removing agenda
Yep.
to pay less
Yeah.
to bring him out. So you
Yeah.
may see 3 of these vamps out. It's possible.
Yeah.
You may see three
Yeah.
sixes out if you're
Yeah.
running a very economic prestige. If you're running it economically, yeah, you can do that.
Theoretically, it would be like running 3 5s, let's say,
Yeah,
which means you would have 5 left over, which is fine, right? Like
right.
if you could do that, if you manage that.
And Stevens also pointed out with Gia as your leader, you're getting the agenda when she is defeating people, and that's the leader. You're then using that agenda to trigger Tenderloin. So yeah, there are definitely ways
That's the
to
combo, right?
yeah, that
The
is a combo.
Yeah, Marcus, Gia, Adrian to some degree, the winning action. Those are producing those crowns so
Right.
that you can then use it for the Tenderloin to get
And then
cheaper,
winning
cheaper
and
sixes.
Tenderloin is from different sources. So yeah, he's pulling out sixes. He's pulling out a few sixes.
Yeah,
And I don't
money
remember
shot
him
as well to some degree.
yeah, money shot as well. Yeah. So yeah, so that's his economy when it comes to paying for these vampires. So that's why it works. That's
I
why it
feel like I
works.
feel like the designers have to love this deck
Yeah. Yeah,
because
I
it's
see
it's
that.
it's definitely everything they wanted to do with La Sombra. Like this feels like peak La Sombra right here, which is getting those finding a way to get that strategy of putting agenda on people to win you games.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's great about this as far as the meta goes? Because when you talk about La Sombra, they've been that clan that was Sabbat. Like they're the founders of the Sabbat. And my impression of the La Sombra always were they're like they're like the Ventrue if the Ventrue were honest. You know, like the La Sombra have no they don't shy away from being vampires or being power players or dominating, their rivals. Like they were proud to be that. But as far as the meta go in the game, I never saw that too much because they were Sabbat and Sabbat vampires kind of like being Sabbat overshadowed your clan because you were already the monster. You were already embracing vampirism. But in this game, when they introduced La Sombra and introduced the idea of you're taking your agenda points, the points you use to win the game, and then using them in the game to do other things, that it just like screams arrogance to me, and I love that. Right? It's that feeling like we're so good, we're so proud that we're going to spend money, right? Basically to beat you up. We're going to spend money that we could use to win the game. We're going to use that just to mess with you. Because that's how confident we are that we're going to win this game without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's La Sombra. That's La Sombra. And the design it's cool.
Right.
I like it. And let's talk a little bit like quickly about maybe some downsides, some angles of trying to hit this deck. Where is it weak?
Sure. I love that.
Um,
I love that.
every deck in this game has weakness. One thing is that it's dependent on attacks. So sometimes, let's say you're staring down at something similar to this, right? Uh, something that's super defensive that doesn't hard to kill, um, and that's your rival. That might be a problem for you, right? Having a bunch of things that you can't kill, that just keep on putting up a wall, wasting your actions, on attacks that don't give you points.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the way you work around that is you use your turf war to your advantage and you start hitting the other people. But as soon as you start hitting the other people, they become a little bit more weak, and then somebody else has a chance of winning,
Uh
right?
huh. Right.
The other problem is that you're putting a bunch of points on your people. So if they die, somebody else is going to get a bunch of points for those, right?
Right.
Like if Gia has like two stacked on her, and somebody hits her, they're going to get those points. Now, I imagine the strategy is that you're going to use them really quickly, for something, but uh, it's a possibility you end up with one or two left over. Seems like what I see a lot with these types of decks.
Uh huh.
Maybe LeverX figured it out, and that just never happens. But it's a possible problem. The other thing is, like you've noticed, and you've said, winning on agenda is going to be really hard, right? Getting beating out the race decks on agenda, um, it's not going to be easy, right? You're going to try to win if you're sitting across the table from a bunch of agenda race decks. You're going to try to win. You're going to try to knock somebody out
Right.
because you're just not going to be able to outpace them.
Right.
It's possible you can control the board so well that you keep them from scoring points, but it's just hard to guarantee that because there's just different agendas and they each do different things. So some of them can't be stopped that way. So I think those are the downsides. It's the downsides of all attack decks. All attack decks have to attack,
Yeah.
and so if your attacks start to fall short, you're just gonna struggle. And yeah,
And
any other
and
thoughts, EC?
Well, it's a little. I do want to go to those thoughts, but I do also want to call out Stevens making a good point. Camarilla hide their agenda on their agenda cards. Sabat put it out there. I mean that's
Yeah,
a great way of looking at it. But as far as
there
the
you go.
weaknesses with this, you know, you don't see a lot of defense. You see a lot of offense, and you have to be in the street to use it. So if you're seeing this deck being played, you're seeing Tenderloin, you know that if you see agenda on vampires, that's the economy. That's what they're gonna be using to bring out more vamps. So I would just hit his prestige pool. Just drain that sucker, right?
Yeah,
You want to do balance of power. You want to do demand obedience. You want to do body and comment. You want to make that prestige pool a little bit smaller to the point where, you know, yeah, if you get your winning and you're able to drop some agenda on guys and then pay those down, sure, you're bringing out a vampire, but it's costing you quite a bit. It's costing you a lot. And if you don't pull it off, now you're not only that, but now you're forcing the player to use the agenda on the vamps. That makes them targets, right? Because now they don't have the defense to block the attacks. You hit them, you hit them with both your actions. It's possible you're going to knock, you might weaken them a little bit. Is this a deck where the whole table needs to gang up on you? No, I don't think so. I think if you have just your rival going after you, maybe another player at the table, I think you can neutralize this deck. This isn't one of those decks that's going to overpower, like I want to say knowledge is power, like a cafe, whatever it was with hoard the herd. That's not where it's going to get. It's not going to automatically gain agenda, right? It has to go out there. It has to be aggressive. It has to do things. And once you're playing that kind of a deck, once you're being aggressive, you're a target. And once you're a target in this game, people can just start coming after you, and they don't need a
Yeah,
reason. They're coming after you because you're the threat.
yeah. It's one of the reasons that I've slowed down with Knowledge is Power is because people know it and they're trying to counter it, and I want to wait until people forget about it, and then I'm going to bring
And
it
then
back
bring
up.
it back. Yeah, I do
But
like that idea.
but right now, yeah, there's a lot of team ups that happen on it, and I think in that last tournament, I got hit by I think what's the card in Malkavian that redirects to sad
Oh, I think it's called redirect or misdirection.
misdirection. Yeah,
I want to say misdirection, but I could be wrong.
we have it. Let's pull it out right now.
Yeah,
Let's
I'm
see.
gonna pull out the attack card. There it is. But
But yeah, I got hit by four of those in one game.
ooh,
Because people are just like, you're the threat, you're the threat, you're the threat. So kind of playing into what you're saying, in this game, sometimes it's nice to be a little bit not the threat or not to seem like the threat. If you can achieve that, like through table talk or through how you're positioning yourself, it's great. If you are winning and people don't know you're winning, that is a really good place to be.
mm-hmm.
Um, and attack decks have a little bit more ability to do that because they're more their potential sitting in their hand rather than out on the table.
That
So
is true. That is
yeah,
true. I mean, they're not. That's the thing. They're not gaining a lot of agenda. Distraction, actually. We're getting that from Satyr Gesture. Distraction's the name of the card. But
distraction.
right, like being an aggressive deck, you're a target when you start using your deck to do things, as opposed to knowledge is power, where you're a threat by turn three. By turn three, you're at sitting at maybe six agenda, maybe seven agenda. That makes you the threat. So now the table has to deal with you, and you can't always get there on turn three with an aggressive deck.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean it's a good deck. There's some classics in here. It's not like there's not any real crazy stuff in here. I think the craziest thing is the fives and sixes kind of strategy. Winning is interesting, but it fits into the combo. So it's the basic combo with Tenderloin and a bunch of big people, and then the basic package for these disciplines.
that's a good point. When you
Yeah.
look at this deck, you mean you're seeing a lot of the core set, right? You're seeing coup de grace, you're seeing the spoils, you're seeing demand obedience, terrorize, irresistible voice, lightning strike, like slap in the face. These were all core cards that, in a way, I mean, I haven't really seen them play except by Brewha players.
Yeah.
When the precons first came out. So I like that this is this is kind of bringing back those old school, or I can't really call them old school. This game's not even a year old, but it's bringing back the core set cards and giving them new life.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that would have made this deck um, interesting and fun would if Dryby was here.
Yeah,
You
and I
know.
think I get why it was take. Oh, we missed one card. I apologize.
Oh.
So we have one card that's not here that should be in here. That's scoped aught 6.
Oh yeah, another old school card, right? Another card from the core
Yeah.
set.
So here's the thing with drive by that I think people kind of they go back and forth on drive by. The problem with drive by is it's hard to make it happen because you need multiple celerity.
Yeah.
And the other problem is that it can be soaked up by physical stat.
Yeah.
So unlike Molotov, which gets past it, drive-by can be basically shut down if they're playing with a bunch of people with physical.
Right.
That's why I stopped running it as often. Sometimes I run two ofs, but I think scoped 3/6 is better because it's a 3 for 2, strong, right off the bat. It's a ranged attack, which means it's hard to block,
Right.
and it has natural intel.
Right. So you're capping people in the Haven. Always good.
Yeah, yes,
Always good to
always
do.
good,
Yeah.
always good. Sorry, I missed that one. But it teams up with Beretta as well, pretty good. So it turns into a 3.
I know we got attack
Nice.
cards over here. I just kind of want to consolidate everything.
Sure.
But yeah, this is the deck that Lexi Jones played and got the win with. And not, I mean, it's elegant. I think that's one way of saying it, elegant. When you're
Yep.
running this many fives and sixes, that's the only way to describe a deck like this. Elegant and ballsy, really,
Yeah.
to have those kind of things. But, as Steven did mention, the economy using Tenderloin with winning, and also Gia's ability, yeah, that whole part works. So to get back kind of to the beginning of this conversation, when we talk about seeing, is this deck going to inspire players to build decks with more higher BP um, vamps? Is that where you see the meta going? I mean, this worked, and it's very simple build when you just kind of look at it, right? This isn't that complicated of a deck. Is that where the meta is going to start going?
I think it's an option.
Mm.
I think it's an option to play this way. I don't think it's the only way to go. I don't think there have been other games where the meta has shifted strong towards one of these things. Like some might call it going tall, right? So
Okay.
going tall as opposed to wide.
Yeah.
But I still see people playing decks that go wide and they're still winning. So I think that it's more like understanding what you're getting with that. Understanding the pros and cons. The pros and cons of running tall vampires is you have less of them. So if they do get knocked out, you're in trouble. But they're sturdy and they do a lot more damage, and that's something you have to think about, right? And they cost you less technically, right? So if you run 2/6s, you end up with a lot of prestige left over relatively, and can kind of fund your whole deck. You can move with two vampires, but then you got to think, if you're a deck that's trying to do multiple attacks in a turn, are you putting them both out there and not being able to block? It's just there's thoughts. You have to think through what the pros and cons are, and it's not. I would say I don't think it's going to take over the meta, but it is a option that you will see more people play because they'll start to think, oh, this could work. Yeah, like this is a possibility, and does my deck work with this type of strategy?
Right. I see what you mean. It kind of opened it up as an option now. Like, oh, it can work. You can do this. Another thing to mention though is the fact that if we're looking for weaknesses in this deck and you're sitting across from this deck, you know what it's doing. If you can take out just one of their vamps, that vamp's going to sit there for
Yeah,
3 turns before it comes back. Maybe two. Maybe you get a mercy on the table. Maybe you get something else that gives you blood and torpor. But for the most part, it's gonna take you a while to build that guy back up, and in the process, you're discarding cards to do it. And
yeah,
there's not a lot of card draw. You got
yeah,
Hydra. That's about it. You
yeah.
know.
But
So
but it's discouraging when you're staring down 2/6s.
yeah,
Attacking them seems like an insurmountable thing,
it's
right?
intimidating. Yep.
Yeah. And so you have to get somebody who's willing to go multiple actions to knock somebody out.
Yeah.
And that can discourage a lot. It discourages people taking pot shots at you.
Right. You got to go in hard. If you're going to go in,
Yeah.
you got to go hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, we're approaching an hour and a half. I think it's probably a good time to just stop and call it with this.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you, Ravyes, for joining me. I mean, thank you for coming on. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you for doing this with
No,
me.
thank
This
you.
was a lot of fun. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
This is a good idea. We kind of went into this just saying, hey, let's just break down the winning decks, and this was fun. I liked this. Opened it up for a lot of other conversations. And I say that maybe we can do this again. Just take decks that are winning, break them down, and seeing what works and seeing what the weaknesses are and things like that. That was fun. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you to the chat for the good questions and comments.
Satyr Gesture and Steven, thank you very much for adding to that. I am EC Bond. This is Ravyes, and we are the Prestige Vampire Rivals podcast.